Sometimes a single glance out of a window can change 2 lives forever. That freezing winter afternoon, I was standing on my balcony watching heavy snow continue to fall over the neighborhood. The wind howled between the buildings, covering everything in a thick blanket of white. Most people had already gone inside to escape the freezing weather, and the streets were almost completely empty. As I looked toward the road below, something caught my attention. A tiny puppy was standing alone in the middle of the snow. His fur was soaked, hanging heavily against his fragile body, and every few seconds he shivered so violently that it looked like he could barely remain standing. He had no shelter, no owner, and nowhere to hide from the bitter cold. He kept looking around as if hoping someone would notice him, but nobody stopped. I watched him struggle to take a few more steps before his legs suddenly gave way beneath him. His little body swayed from side to side, then he collapsed into the snow without moving again. The moment I saw him fall, I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the thickest blanket I could find, rushed downstairs, and ran through the snow as fast as I could. By the time I reached him, his body was frighteningly cold. He wasn't responding when I called to him, and his breathing had become so weak that I had to lean in close just to make sure he was still alive. Snowflakes continued landing on his motionless body, while the icy wind blew across his face. I carefully wrapped him inside the blanket, holding him tightly against my chest as I hurried back inside the house. All I could think about was getting his body temperature back before it was too late. As soon as I got home, I filled a large basin with comfortably warm water, making sure the temperature wasn't too hot for his weakened body. I gently lowered him into the water while continuing to wrap the upper part of his body with the blanket to prevent him from losing more heat. For several long minutes, nothing happened. He remained completely still, and my heart sank a little deeper with every passing second. Then, almost imperceptibly, one of his ears twitched. A few moments later, his breathing became stronger. His little paws moved slightly beneath the water, and finally his eyes slowly opened. When he looked up at me, I saw something I will never forget. His eyes filled with tears. Whether it was pain, fear, relief, or simple exhaustion, I could never know for certain. But in that moment it felt as though he understood that someone had finally come to help him. He didn't bark. He didn't struggle. He simply looked at me while quietly catching his breath. I gently stroked his head and kept speaking softly to reassure him that he was safe now. Little by little, warmth returned to his body. The violent shivering stopped, and his breathing became steady once again. Once I was sure he was no longer in immediate danger, I prepared a warm meal for him. I placed the bowl nearby, unsure whether he would even have the strength to eat. The smell of food quickly reached him. He slowly lifted his head, stood on shaky legs, and carefully walked toward the bowl. At first, he ate cautiously, almost as if he couldn't believe the food actually belonged to him. Then his hunger took over. He began eating faster and faster until every last piece had disappeared. Watching him finish that simple meal made me realize just how long he must have been surviving alone outside in the freezing cold. After he had regained a little strength, I carefully gave him a warm bath to remove the dirt, ice, and mud trapped deep inside his fur. The dirty water flowing away seemed to wash away part of the difficult life he had been carrying. Once he was clean, I gently dried him with warm towels before using a hairdryer on the lowest setting so he wouldn't become cold again. Underneath the tangled fur was an adorable little puppy who looked completely different from the one I had picked up out of the snow only a short time earlier. That evening I prepared a soft bed beside the heater, where he could finally rest without fear. He curled himself into a tiny ball, sighed softly, and fell asleep almost immediately. Looking at him sleeping peacefully, it was hard to imagine that only hours earlier he had been lying unconscious in the snow, with almost no chance of surviving the night. I quietly promised him that as long as he stayed with me, he would never have to face another winter alone. From that day forward, he officially became part of my family. Every morning began with a warm breakfast, clean water, and a little time playing together before I started my day. At first, he was still timid, often looking around as though expecting someone to take everything away from him again. But as the days passed, his confidence slowly returned. His tail began wagging whenever he saw me. He followed me from room to room, always wanting to stay close. Before long, he was running around the yard, chasing toys, rolling happily across the grass, and greeting every new day with endless energy. Watching his transformation became one of the greatest rewards I had ever experienced. The weak puppy who had once collapsed alone in a snowstorm was now healthy, playful, and full of life. His fur became soft and shiny, his eyes sparkled with happiness, and his playful personality grew stronger every single day. Every evening he would curl up beside me, resting his head on my leg, as though reminding me that he had finally found the home he had always deserved. Sometimes people ask why I continue rescuing abandoned animals even though it takes so much time, effort, and patience. The answer is simple. Every rescued life reminds me that kindness has the power to completely rewrite someone's future. If I had looked away that afternoon, that little puppy would probably never have survived the freezing night. Instead, he now wakes up every morning surrounded by warmth, safety, food, and love. He no longer has to fight against the cold or wonder where his next meal will come from. He has a family, a home, and a future filled with happiness. And every time I see him running toward me with his tail wagging as fast as it can, I know that rushing through the snow that day was one of the best decisions I have ever made.